Before we start this episode, I wanted to tell you that if you're looking for free dog training courses, you can take the Victoria Stilwell Academy's most popular free course, Building Your Dog's Confidence, right now by going to vsdogtrainingacademy.com. That's vsdogtrainingacademy.com. Okay, now on with the podcast. On the podcast today, I have the wonderful Niki Tudge. Now, you will have seen, it's everywhere, PPG, Pet Professional Guild. And if you've been lucky enough, you've gone to one of their conferences in person, and you can also join online. But I've known Niki for a while, and we're both British. And we have similar journeys when it comes to that. We are now settled in the United States of America. Niki's in Florida. I'm here in Georgia. She does have a fascinating story, which I want to know more about, because I was just talking to her before we started to record, and I was like, I think you're always into promoting everybody else and, of course, PPG and everything, but nobody really knows your journey. And I think your journey's fascinating. So I want to talk about that. And then we're going to talk about how to find good pet professionals. And then we're going to go and just see where this takes us. But Niki's an absolutely mind of information. And welcome to the podcast, Niki Tudge.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to chat with you, Vicky.
Yes, it is. Now, you're obviously a Brit, which just makes me feel much better. And you have now settled in Florida, but you have, reading your bio, have traveled around the world, worked around the world, always had this fascination with animals, haven't just worked with dogs, worked with other species. So I'd like to find out, before we talk about PPG and talk about your philosophy, I'd love to find out more about how you got to be the founder of this global organization.
Okay.
Where did it start?
Where did we start? Oh my God. Well, I think, first of all, I was raised in a family that were massive animal lovers, but my brother, has a PhD in physics, who is completely different to me, he was diagnosed with asthma as a very early baby, very young, and very serious asthma. So it was obvious that a pet was not going to be part of our household. So as soon as I was old enough and had left home, I got 2 cats. So I was actually a cat person before I was a dog person. Had 2 cats and was very fortunate. I lived in London, was extremely fortunate that I worked for a great organization with a great boss and had an opportunity when I was 21 to work overseas. And my first position overseas was actually the Sandy Lane Hotel in Barbados, which, if anyone knows the hotel industry, it was one of the top 10 hotels in the world back in the 90s, early 90s, late 1980s. Still is a fabulous property now. And then was sort of thrust into an international career, which was fabulous. And I say I was very lucky, but I was also single and was quite determined to stay single. So as an executive, it was very easy for my company to say, hey, can you go to Bermuda? Hey, can you go to Egypt? Hey, can you go to Saudi? Wherever. Because I was just like, yeah, whatever. Off I went. And I always had cats. I had 2 cats in Egypt. I had 2 Persian chinchillas that travel first class with me wherever my company sent me on the seat of the aeroplane. So I was always massively into pets. Never had a dog because it just wouldn't have been fair to have owned a dog, because most of my work life was on 2-year assignments. So I knew whenever I went anywhere, I was only going to be there for 2 years maximum. When I was in the West Indies, I was actually a regional director for Jamaica, Bermuda, Barbados, Guyana. So I traveled all over the place. And it wasn't until I met my husband in Nigeria. We actually met through President Carter, funnily enough. So watching the news about he and his wife in the newspaper is always we always have a few sort of quiet moments about it, because we actually hosted him at the hotel I managed, and my husband worked for the US Embassy and he was responsible for hosting him at the embassy. So that was how I met Rick. I spent a couple of years in Nigeria, and we actually had, the hotel was on 50 acres and it was completely self-sustaining hotel because it was in Abuja, which was the capital of Nigeria. And it had been chosen as a capital because it was literally in the geographic center of the country. So they chose that location because of all the issues between the different tribes and the religions, and they felt that that would be the best balance of government. So the hotel was there right in the middle of Abuja on 50 acres, and the chefs grew their own herbs. I mean, literally the hotel was completely self-sufficient. And we had our own security dogs that used to parole, and one of them had puppies. And I'd already moved in with Rick, so I was living on the US Embassy compound, and I decided one day I was taking one of these puppies home, which was ridiculous, really, because I knew nothing about dogs, knew nothing about training. And within about 48 hours, Rick was like, take it back, because it was not adjusted to living in a home. It just wasn't. I mean, these dogs were raised outside. They were not raised to be sociable. And so much of what I did was wrong, knowing what I know now. But it was the first dog I ever owned for the 48 hours. And I always promised as soon as I settled, I would get a dog. So fast forward a few years, we moved to South Africa, still didn't have dogs or cats, had my cats. But then my husband took early retirement and I was transferred to the big island of Hawaii. And as soon as we landed in Hawaii and bought our own house, I said, that's it, I'm getting a dog. And got my first dog that was a Kelpie. I mean, it was just absolutely ridiculous. Ridiculous. And I literally got it from a backyard breeder. I mean, everything about this dog was ridiculously stupid, which is why I have a lot of empathy for pet owners that make the same mistakes. Drove to the person's house, chose the dog, paid for the dog, put it in the car, went home, no equipment, no food, no leash, no crate, nothing. And in 2 weeks' time was just going, oh my God, because this dog was aggressive and all kinds of problems. And I phoned the local dog trainer, who actually is a PPG member, Tammy Goodrew. Hi, Tammy, if you're listening. And I said, you have to come now. I have a very aggressive dog. You have to come. This dog needs to be fixed. And she basically came out and just started laughing as soon as she saw this gorgeous little 16-week-old Kelpie and just said, it's a puppy. It's just a normal puppy. And I enrolled into puppy classes immediately, and we spent the next 3 years, my entire 3 years in Hawaii. We just trained. This dog and I were inseparable, and we just trained, and we brought agility to the big island of Hawaii. Rick's claim to fame is that the very first agility equipment in Hawaii was built by him, because I wanted to do agility. There was no one there teaching it. There was no equipment. There were no clubs. We couldn't import the equipment, so he was challenged to build it. So that was the beginning, really. And I was very fortunate because the trainer I'd chosen, Tammy, had been a marine trainer in Oahu. So her only exposure to training had been clicker training or using whistles with operant conditioning. So it had never occurred to me ever. And it's funny because my husband's a typical engineer. When I got Dobie, he went off to buy all the books about dog training, and we bought 3 books. We bought the Brian Killamore book, the Monks of New Ski,
yep,
and Barbara Woodhouse. They were the only 3 books that were available to put, and I still have them to this day. They were the only 3 books, and we literally read them from cover to cover, and both of us just went, absolutely not. If that's what we have to do to have a well-behaved dog, then this dog is going to be misbehaved, because there's even without knowing anything about dog training, I always knew that I was never going to do anything to an animal that I wouldn't do to a person. So right from day one, the decision was absolutely not. We're not going to even shout at the dog. We're certainly not going to use some of the equipment being recommended. So again, just very, very fortunate that we found Tammy. So I was also finishing my master's degree at the time, managing the Orchid at Monolani on the Big Island, and had decided one day I was just sitting in my office at home doing something, and I just said, you know what, I'm sick of this. This is a mug's game. I want to be working with dogs every day. And Rick had gone out sailing. He had a sailing boat, and I found a house in Florida on the internet, which I bought. He came back from sailing, and I literally said, I've made an offer on a house in Florida. I want to move there. I want to go there. I want to live there. I want to open a dog training school. I want to learn how to be a dog trainer. And he was like, well, hang on a minute. My contract was almost over. And the company I work for actually transferred me to the Bahamas, which is how we relocated on an 18-month contract. So I then had 18 months to get everything set up before I made the launch. So yeah, it's like everything in life. It was just the right time, right location, right place. And I just thought, yeah, let's do this.
So wait a second. He went out on his boat
Yeah.
And came back.
Yeah.
And you had bought a place in Florida.
I'd
or
made
put an offer.
I'd made an offer on a house in Florida, on 10 acres of land, because I thought this is great. And my company was already talking to me about sending me to the Bahamas. So I thought, you know what, I'll go to the Bahamas. We can have it as a weekend home. And once my contract's finished in the Bahamas, we'll just see where it all lays out. And I was actually working for Starwood, so I spent a lot of time in Atlanta because their head office was in Atlanta on Peachtree Plaza. And about 3 months after I got to the Bahamas, Hurricane Francis and then Hurricane Jean came through within 3 weeks of each other, wiped out both the hotels I was managing. And the company said to me, do you want to stay and rebuild? And I said, no, I think that's the message from God. I'm heading off to Florida. And that's what I did.
Two hurricanes in the same, within 3 weeks of each other.
Yeah. It was back in, it would have been 2005, 2006. And the first one that came through literally wiped both hotels out. It was awful. It was dreadful. That's a whole other story. The second one that came through 3 weeks later, we had on site thousands of contractors. We had full generator setups. We had water companies. We had electric companies. And we literally just sat there through the whole hurricane, not with watching live TV, because we had so many people on site that were there to sort of get the hotels back online, that it was incredible. But I also thought, you know what, this is obviously the right time to make the move. So that's
so you make a move to Florida.
Yeah.
And then you would you start to learn about?
No, I'd already started learning. When I was in Hawaii, I signed up there was a course in the UK. It was the only online course, and it was run by, I think it was a woman called Deborah Bragg out of Cumbria, and it was called the Canine Behavior College. I still have the files. And I did that. And then there was an online dog training certification through Penn Foster. I mean, this was back in the day when there was literally nothing there.
Yeah. Oh, I know that.
Yeah. And I did that. And then I did a vet tech online course. And then I did a grooming online course. I was just churning out all these courses, just trying to get as much education as I could. And then I found Susan Smith, who had her website. I think she was the only person at the time that was offering webinars. And I remember it was in the day when the only people that were really around were Jean Donaldson and Ian Dunbar and a couple of other people. So that was sort of how I got started. Yeah. And then once I decided to launch and do this properly, I signed up with James O'Hara at Cassie in Canada and did 2 of his diploma programs. Because even though I didn't really understand the industry, I did recognize that going into another profession, I should garner as much education as I could, even though you didn't need to. I mean, even now, right?
No, you didn't.
Anybody can still just open up a business.
I mean, that's sort of the tragedy. But I think I was in the same boat as you in the fact that, I started off in London. And when I came to America, the only course that, I wanted to become a Petco trainer. Mm-hmm. And so in order to become a Petco trainer, you had to take this course, and it was with the Animal Behavior and Training Associates, which turns out to be ABC College now.
Got it, right.
So that's who I got my certification through.
And now the market's just absolutely flooded, isn't it? I mean, it's flooded from everything from, your academy, Jean Donaldson's academy, Dognostics, to, do a 2-day course and call yourself a professional dog trainer.
Yes.
I mean, it's...
Well, that's what we have. We have a problem with that. I do want to talk about that, but then you founded the Pet Professional Guild, PPG, which is now global. But I want to read it so that I get it right. It was founded based on a commitment to provide educational resources to pet care providers and the public, coupled with an emphasis on building collaboration among force-free pet trainers and professional pet care providers and advocates for mutually agreed guiding principles for the pet care industry. PPG partners, members, and affiliates focus on each pet's physical, mental, environmental, and nutritional well-being, adhering to a holistic approach to the care and training of family pets. Now, at that time, still, it really the positive training was there were a few flag bearers. But it kind of wasn't cool and sexy. It was becoming more prevalent, this whole this positive way of teaching dogs. But we were still sort of meshed into, I don't really know where we were. We were kind of like floating.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I was, For me, I think it really moved for me. I think there were two phases. There was I was a member of the APDT because everybody was. It was the only organization, right?
Yep.
And I remember once going to the website and looking up my profile, and on both sides of my profile were shot collar trainers. And I just went, absolutely not. I do not want my name. I don't want to be a part of an organization where that's okay. But I didn't really make a decision about it. I just sort of grumbled. I also, Vicky, I didn't put myself out there in our industry. I mean, I was busy with my other career, trying to develop a new career. To be honest with you, and this will surprise a lot of people, but I am a real introvert. I mean, significant introvert. Given that I used to host, I managed hotels, multi-million-dollar hotels with thousands of employees. But at my best, I want to be at home with a book on a computer, quietly with my husband, not in large crowds. I can function in large crowds. People consider me very social, but it's not really who I am. It's not where I go to recharge or for motivation. So I wasn't out there in the industry. I knew some of the key players. I knew of them. I didn't know them. And it wasn't until in 2011, my husband and I were expanding our Dogsmith headquarters. We'd outgrown the headquarters in Florida. So we bought an animal hospital, a grooming facility, boarding facility, and dog park in Oxford, Mississippi. And that was supposed to have been our sort of do 5 or 6 years there and then look at retirement and sort of, transition into retirement. We kept our home in Florida. I moved out there initially to get the business going, and then Rick joined me. Well, about 3 months into it, we realized, and I can actually speak to this now, I couldn't speak to it for many years, A, because I had PTSD after it, and B, because there were legal restrictions. The people that sold it to us had actually provided fraudulent financials. So within 3 months of owning this business, the business was actually losing about $15,000 a month. It wasn't netting the $30,000 it was supposed to. So we had to go into massive pull up our shirt sleeves, get stuck in and figure out what we were going to do with this business. And it ended up going legal, which took 3 years to resolve. So I was there for 3 years. So the first couple of months I was there, I went to PetSmart. I'm going to name PetSmart as well. I haven't done that before. I went to PetSmart to buy some supplies for the animal hospital and the boarding facility. And as I walked down one of the aisles in there, I heard a dog scream. And as I walked around the corner, I saw a dog trainer hanging a dog on a choke leash. And there was like 4 other people with their dogs, and they were literally parading dogs one at a time down this aisle. And if the other dogs that were standing there reacted, they were literally just jerked and hung until they acquiesced. And I just immediately went, stop, what are you people doing? This is ridiculous. And the woman said, I have permission to do this. I work for PetSmart. So I immediately went running to the front, abandoned my shopping cart, went running to the front, insisted on seeing the manager, who came out and said, look, I don't know what they're doing, but she's in her own time. She's one of our group trainers, but this is private business, but she's allowed to use the store. And I was like, this is absolutely unacceptable. I'm familiar with the PetSmart training manuals. One of our Dogsmiths had gone through PetSmart training, so I was very familiar with their curriculum, and I knew that this was absolutely not part of their curriculum. I burst into tears. I felt absolutely hopeless. I burst into tears, ran out of the store, ran straight into my husband, who was coming in to join me, who thought that there'd been an armed robbery or something because of the panic I left the store in. And he said, where's all our supplies? And I said, I just left them. I just can't be in there. I can't listen to that noise. I just can't. I was just so devastated by it. And so we went home, and I said to him, I said, I can't be the only person that feels this way. There's got to be a lot of other people that feel the same way I feel. And he said, well, how are you going to find them? I said, I don't know, but maybe we should just start our own organization and see if we can attract people to join us. So that night, I'll never forget it. That night, I sat on my laptop on this recliner chair in our living room. And I thought, well, if we have an organization, we've got to have some guiding principles. We've got to have a mission, vision, and values. So I wrote the guiding principles that have not changed since that day. It's the only document that PPG's ever produced that has never been edited or updated. It's stayed exactly the same. And I sort of looked at it and thought, is this something that I could live by? If I can other people? And I never forget, we put up this crappy website. It had like 3 crappy pages, and literally hundreds of people joined within days. It was incredible, the number of people that came out of the woodwork. And it was free. because we wanted to get a feel for, what's the marketplace? How many people out there feel the same way? We didn't start charging membership until I think it was year 3, because at that point we'd been carrying the cost of it. So we obviously registered a non-profit, charged membership, so that now membership fees pay for for all the overhead. But Rebecca King, who's still with us, she was our operations manager at the animal hospital. And the business was really quiet because there were business levels were not as they were supposed to be. And just to sort of give Rebecca some more work, I'd asked her if she wouldn't mind processing the applications when they came in, because they came in as PDF documents. And about 2 weeks after we did this, I walked into the animal hospital one day, and there was literally a pile of paper on the front desk, and her little head came over it. And she goes, "Have you seen how much I've got to do?" And I was like, "What's that?" And she goes, "This is all the applications that have come in over the last 3 days." And at that point, I was like, oh my God, there's obviously a lot more people out there that feel the same way I feel. So that was how it got started.
Wow. And now PPG's around the world.
Yeah. I mean, and it's fabulous. And I think we've achieved a lot, because I think if you look at APDT and IABC, everybody sort of gradually moved their positions, haven't they? They've come out with operational definitions and LEMA. So I think just by being in the industry, we've put pressure on other associations, because members are going, well, hang on a minute. If PPG can do this, why can't you guys do this? And it is hard, because at PPG, it's hard for us to get sponsorships for events, because we won't take money off anyone that doesn't fully align with us. And we've had people pay for sponsorships, and we've had to call them, and I have to personally call them and say, "I'm really sorry, but we've refunded the money for you because you sell shock collars, and we can't, we just can't do that." So it is difficult. It is hard. And I constantly hear people quoting words like PPG is very extreme, which I don't believe we are extreme.
Well, I don't think you are at all.
No. I mean, I'm not an extreme person. I'm I'm a libertarian. I'm very much sort of live and let live. And if what you're doing doesn't impact me, you can knock yourself out. But I do think that when it comes to sentient beings and animals that can't speak for themselves, I do think we have to get off the fence. I think the day has come when we should no longer be straddling the fence. And there's very few of us. I mean, you're another one who, have made it very clear. We don't sit on the fence. This is how we feel. This is what we believe in. And I think you can do that without being extreme. You can be objective, and you can have objective criteria, and you can have professional standards. We're not out there screaming and shouting and eviscerating people. Our guiding principles speak to how we treat other people as well as how we treat animals. We feel very strongly that I will condemn methods, philosophy, equipment, but you won't hear me speak badly of an individual, because I just don't think that's our role. And I don't think we gain any traction by doing that either, right? So that's kind of where we've come from, and we've got a lot more to achieve. We've got all kinds of stuff going on in the background. Some of it we can't talk about, some of it we can. But I think the industry's starting to shift. I really do. I'm not sure that we'll achieve everything that I would like to achieve in my lifetime, but I think we can certainly push in that direction.
It's interesting when people say that you're extreme, because what's extreme about considering the animal's welfare, putting the animal's welfare first and foremost in your mind? That's not extreme. That's smart. That's what we need to be doing. Absolutely. I always see these, these are vulnerable beings. Mm-hmm. These dogs are vulnerable beings that rely on us 100% for everything, because we've made them that way, because that's they live in our homes and we have to feed them, and God forbid anything happens to us, they can't get out. I mean, we have them in this confined space, and we love them and we provide for them as best as we can. What is extreme about putting that welfare first and foremost? I don't understand it. And I only think people call it extreme because they are from the other side, or maybe they're more sort of that balanced, or they just don't understand.
Right.
Or they think you're just too woke and a snowflake. I mean, all of the words that I've been called. But similar to you, even though some of my methods have changed, definitely, and in a very public way since 2000 and, since I was on TV, started 2005, I've always been true to the positive. I've always, I've never budged from it. And it's just amazing to me that anybody could validate hurting an animal in order to get it to obey you, to be trained. I don't understand how you can do it.
Especially now, Vic, because, I mean, back in the day, and I say back in the day, I mean, back in the early 2000s when I first started training, there was nothing out there about neuroscience or emotions. I mean, we all knew that anyone that shares a home with an animal knows that they have emotions. It was all very sort of applied behavior analysis that was all very sort of tack. And so, we've all moved forwards with the industry. I mean, now we talk about emotions, we talk about consent testing and preference testing and neuroscience and, how animals are motivated and thoughts and feelings. Even when we didn't know all that, we still wouldn't have employed a method that would have purposely, deliberately hurt an animal or created the animal to feel that they were under any type of threat. I mean, we just wouldn't have done that. And you see these sort of trainers out there that are, literally, bullying. I don't know what other word you can use to describe it. They are physically bullying, harassing, beating, inflicting pain, purposely, strategically, tactically, to force an animal to oblige to their wishes. And it's just absolutely wrong. Jean Donaldson was at our conference in Arizona last month, and Jean said something. I honestly, I joke about this, but I think someone needs to put a lexicon together of all Jean Donaldson's expressions, because whenever she opens her mouth, you sort of go, wow, got to remember that. And she said, can you imagine going to the zoo in Atlanta? There would be millions of people protesting if they were in there with big shock collars on lions, forcing them to comply. Nobody would be okay with that. Yet we are perfectly okay with putting that on a little Bichon Frise dog in our homes, an animal that, for all intents and purposes, is still, our pet dogs are captive animals. Let's not fool ourselves, right? They're not living free. They're captive like a zoo animal. We can control where they go, how they go, what they do, what they eat, etc. And I don't understand that disconnect with how we are so passionate about not causing pain or fear with zoo animals, but pet owners are absolutely okay to do that to a dog in their own home.
I have to say, I just came back from a walk and I saw, I think it looked like an Anatolian Shepherd mix, and it was being walked, and it looked, I was watching and I thought, and I saw a remote around the woman's neck. I was like, oh God, here we go. Who she's learned this from. But I saw the dog look over another dog that was in the distance, and immediately her hand went to the remote and he snapped his head back. I was like, oh, that just happened. And shamelessly, because that's what they've been taught. I'm just like, I can't. There's we know that there are so many, there's better ways of doing things, but I just was like, I felt so sorry for that dog. Big, powerful dog. Yeah, but I still felt sorry for it. Yeah. There's just no need. There's no need. So we, being a leader in this industry and running our organizations and our academies, and we see that how one of the reasons why we did VSPDT and of course now VSA is because we wanted people to have access to trainers that would come in and work with their dogs without the use of fear, pain, and intimidation, right? So, but there are still people employing trainers that are punitive and using the shock and that kind of stuff. So when we come back, I want to talk about how people can find a good trainer, and not just a trainer, but how can they find a good groomer? What are the things that they need to look for? So we will be back after this short break. Are you a dog trainer looking to take your knowledge and skills to the highest level? Or maybe you're a dog guardian interested in figuring out whether your love of dogs can translate into more of a career than a hobby. Or are you already working in the pet industry but recognize that you need to fill some gaps when it comes to how to manage dog behavior so that you can better serve your existing clients? No matter where you are on your journey, the Victoria Stilwell Academy has courses that can help you get to where you want to go. From our free Building Your Dog's Confidence starter course to the powerful fundamentals of dog training and behavior course, all the way up to our flagship professional dog trainer course, we have options for every skill level and budget. All you have to do is be passionate about giving dogs the best lives possible. All of our courses are available online anywhere around the world 24/7. No gimmicky sales tactics where you need to act within a certain window to enroll. My amazing team at the Victoria Stilwell Academy understands that we need to be ready to serve you whenever the time is right for you to make the jump. Whether that means dipping your toes into our free courses or realizing your fullest professional dog training dream by enrolling in the dog trainer course. So, join the thousands of dog geeks like you that are a part of our amazing and supportive VSA family today. We have Academy specialists available to talk with you and figure out how we can help you reach your dog training goals, or you can enroll in a starter course for free right now. The Victoria Stilwell Academy. It's the future of dog training. Welcome back. I'm talking to Niki Tudge, and now we're going to delve deep into how do you find a pet professional when there is so many to choose from. And I do want to talk, Niki, also about the animal behavior and training charter. But let's just, first of all, how difficult is it to find a good trainer nowadays?
Well, I mean, it's still, even with organizations like yours and PPG and, all the other I say all the other because there are not that many actually, the other organizations that showcase the best of positive reinforcement trainers or dog walkers or groomers. Just in the area that I live in, there is nobody else directly in this area within about 40 miles that I can refer to. So it is difficult, but I think what's easier for us all now is that people are a lot more comfortable now doing training on Zoom. And I think the pandemic really has put our industry in a great position because now, especially with separation anxiety and some of the sort of specialty areas, it's very easy to refer out to an expert who understands how to use that technology to help pets. So there really isn't an excuse anymore. And I think a lot more people are also more comfortable using technology. People that pre-pandemic wouldn't have had a Zoom account or wouldn't have known how to jump on Skype or Google Meet or whatever, a lot more comfortable now doing that. So I think it's easier now than it was, A, because there are more professionals out there that are more prepared to say, hey, this is what I believe in. And B, because for a lot of the specialty areas, trainers can now support pet owners by using technology, which is great. But I think where the difficulty comes to me for pet owners is, and it's one of the areas in our industry that I feel very strongly about, and I am determined next year to do something about it for all intents and purposes, is this absolute fraudulent marketing that our industry is perfectly okay accepting. And I'll give you an example. 4 of us wrote a book 5 years ago about how we believe our industry should move in terms of, and you're familiar with it, you and I.
Excellent book. Yep.
Yeah. And one of the chapters in there is about fraudulent marketing, and it gives examples of cases with Kellogg's and some of the big cosmetic companies and some of the athletic shoe companies that have been successfully sued over the last 20 years for making statements about their products that are not scientific. So as an example, one breakfast cereal said, give your children a bowl of this and it will give them all the required daily vitamins. And it doesn't. It's absolute baloney. They were sued for that. They had to remove it. They had to pay damages. So, consumer transparency and fraudulent marketing is against the law. Yet, trainers in our industry who use shock and don't use any other types of tools can actually go out there and say, our methods are pet friendly. Our methods don't hurt pets. These are blatant lies. And I think it's only a matter of time until somebody takes these organizations on. Because then once we start getting some case law on the books about fraudulent marketing in our industry, I think it's going to be like a steamroller effect. Because, as we know, even some of the shock collar companies, and there is a lawsuit with shock collars right now that we're involved in, and I'm not going to talk to it because we're trying to keep it under the radar as much as possible. But that particular shock collar company, you only get access to the extensive user manual once you bought the product. And in the user manual, it talks about the damage the shock collar can do. So, they're not even denying that these tools and equipment can be seriously both emotionally and physically damaging. It's almost like there's just no fear. It's the Wild West out there. You can say whatever you want about your training practices, your equipment, how you use it, and it doesn't matter. And that, for me, is the biggest problem for pet owners, because even an educated, well-informed pet owner can get pulled into the wrong professional because, even if they ask the right questions, because of fraudulent marketing.
In your book, you write a lot, and I've used, I quote you on our site and I've quoted you in articles, but in your book, you have a section about prongs and chokes and shock collars. And a lot of your arguments, you back up with scientific research that's been done. And I know that more has come out since then. Can you tell me a bit about why? Because, the part of the marketing is we're led to believe that these devices don't hurt dogs when they're used properly. And which again is sort of seems crazy to me, because I guess if they're used properly, they're designed to inflict pain.
Well, exactly. I mean, and let's tweeze apart that word properly, because we see that all over the place if they're used properly. Now, and let's go back to the question about PPG being extreme, because we do, in our guiding principles, we say that PPG members don't use shock, prong, or choke. And I get questions weekly that says, what about gentle leaders? What about halties? What about this? What about that? And my answer is this. Any piece of equipment, whether it's a clicker or a leash or a harness, if you smack a dog with it, if you shove it in a dog's eye, if you become an ass with it, it can cause damage. The point is that shock, prong, and choke, by design, their intent is to cause pain, force, or fear, so the animal will cease or not think about doing a particular behavior. So shock collars, if an animal's charging away from you and you keep shocking them, inflicting pain, and the animal stops and you stop the shock, the animal learns, if I don't do this, the shock's removed. So by using it properly, you are creating pain and fear. With an electronic barrier fence, the dog is conditioned that when they hear that beep, 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 you better beware, because if you take one more step, you're going to feel pain. The anticipation of pain can actually be more fear rising than the actual pain. I mean, how many of us as children experienced our parents just throwing out casual threats? The right threat could be a lot more intimidating than your parents smacking you across the back of the head and saying, on you go.
Terrifying. Terrifying.
Absolutely. So we said no to those three pieces of equipment, because by design, by function, by intent, when they are used properly, they are designed to inflict pain or fear. Then you have pieces of equipment like gentle leaders and halters. And, this is where we get onto the extreme argument, because I hear people saying we shouldn't be using them. And I've heard you talk about this, Vicky, and I said something very similar recently. I'm working right now with a couple of teenage girls that are both autistic. I've been employed by their mother to help them train their dog. They are working with a 140-pound Mastiff dog. And in the right harness, on my property, I have a few acres. We had the dog on a harness. A dog ran past my property outside. That dog face planted 3 of us and dragged us across the pasture. Mm-hmm. So would I use a halty or a gentle leader as a generic piece of equipment? Absolutely not. Would I use one if conditioned properly to enable a dog to have a little bit of a dog walk every day safely while we teach the right skills? Absolutely. Absolutely. That equipment, if used incorrectly, can cause damage, but it's not designed to cause damage. That's not how it's designed, right? So I think it's really difficult, because again, you listen to podcasts of these sort of very well thought of dog trainers talking about how to use a shock collar properly, and hundreds of pet owners going, "Oh yeah, it's great, it's great, it's great." And it's really difficult, because they do get sucked into the glamour of look how quickly it works.
Yeah, it's very reinforcing for them.
Right. And punishing's reinforcing, right? I mean, when that lady's walking that dog and it looks around and she shocks it and it very quickly becomes compliant, she's like, woohoo, bit more of that. That worked really well, right? it's very reinforcing for them. What people are not thinking about is the unintended consequences of the behavioral fallout next month, next year, when they end up with dogs that are afraid to look at another dog or to go out the front door or to come when called because the consequences have been devastating for them. So if you want quick fix solutions, this equipment works, but it's a quick fix that is going to give you a lot more problems in the long term. Take away from the fact that from an ethical point of view, we shouldn't be doing anything to an animal that not only is do no harm, it should be doing good, right? When we are interacting with people and animals, when I walk away from an interaction with anybody, whether it's somebody on the street or in the supermarket, whenever I walk away from that interaction, I like to think to myself that my interaction has had some kind of positive impact on that person. Maybe it made them smile. Maybe I gave them a couple of minutes of chatter that they hadn't had. Maybe there was a shared joke. And with a pet, that they benefited from that interaction. They enjoyed that interaction. They found it playful. They found it enriching. They found it reinforcing. But in some way, it's not just about not doing harm, but it's also about enriching that pet's life and making life easier for them. And I struggle. I wake up every morning thinking about this. How do we speak to pet owners? How do we give them the information that they need so that they can meander carefully through this cobweb of all these professionals that are everything from shock collar trainers to positive reinforcement trainers without skills? Because let's be honest, positive reinforcement trainers, I mean, competence is king here, right? I mean, there's a lot of people in our industry out there talking about positive reinforcement, but they can't do it. They can't train the dog in front of them. And in many ways, that is as damaging as the people that are out there using aversive tools, because what we're doing is we are educating a whole population of people that positive reinforcement doesn't work because the tactician, the technician, the dog trainer doesn't know what they're doing and they're not doing it well. Therefore, they're not getting results. And that, for me, is just as damaging because we all know where that client goes next.
Of course.
That client goes to the other end of the spectrum because that end of the spectrum hasn't worked for them.
Well, then, so let's say for the client, right, there's the fancy marketing, which I do agree, the shock collar companies and other more punitive, they're actually really, really good at their marketing because it's sexy. It sort of sells. Oh, let me see, some certain television programs are kind of sexy than mine because I guess for people, it's much sexier to see somebody wrestle a dog to a ground rather than, you know, me teaching a dog not to run out the door and being kind to it. I mean, I think sexy sells, right? And so the average person would rather be entertained like that. But, you know, so it always surprises me that it's me or the dog has lasted so long because, you know, not the most interesting viewing to do some clicker training, but that's why there's a bit of entertainment value to it as well. And, but if people want to find a trainer, right, they have no idea. What are the sort of things that we should tell people you need to look for? The kind of trainer, right? What do you look for and what do you avoid?
Okay. Well, I mean, first of all, I would look for trainers that have some level of qualification. And I know there'll be a strong pushback against that comment because a lot of people do not. But I think what qualifications do show is a professional's intent to further their education in a formal way through an organization. So I think number one. Number two, nobody can guarantee results. Behavior is a product of the environment. If somebody guarantees results, run as fast as possible. Number three, if anybody guarantees a timeline, because ultimately dog training is like any other mechanical skill. You'll get out of it what you put into it. And if pet owners, fully embrace the consultant that they're paying, they'll get fabulous results if they hire the right person. And I think as well, I mean, I don't know if you remember several years ago, Jean Donaldson asked, there were those 3 questions that Jean Donaldson put out that were, what happens if my dog gets it right? What happens if my dog gets it wrong? You should be asking those questions. Because if somebody is telling you as a professional that they will use anything that is forceful or bullyish or harassment or physical, then again, run for the hills. We know we can train dogs without even touching them. Zoo animals are trained behind protected contact. You don't have to physically brawl with a dog to teach a dog to sit or to down or to come. I think as well, for me as well, you know, I mean, I want a dog trainer as well that looks professional. I mean, I want a trainer that is going to be punctual, that is going to, you know, dress appropriately. They're going to have the equipment that they need. They're going to be a good people trainer. They're going to be personable. They're going to make you feel good about your interactions with them. Because if you feel intimidated by them, imagine how your pet's about to feel, right? And we all know those dog trainers that are sort of very macho.
Yeah, they terrify me.
yeah, absolutely. And if it doesn't feel right, I mean, I remember years ago being at a dog event in Panama City Beach when we lived in Panhandle, and the Panama City Beach put on a dog exhibition, and they had a dog trainer out there who was demoing, and he asked somebody if they could borrow their dog, and he borrowed this Labrador, and he was walking this Labrador around, and every 2 steps he was jerking the dog. And I looked at the owner and I said, "Are you okay with that?" And she goes, "Well, yeah." And I said, "It doesn't cross your mind that your dog might be finding that really unpleasant?" And she sort of looked at me and I said, "You can always walk in there, you know, and ask him for your dog back. You don't have to accept that because he's a professional, what he's doing is okay." And at that point, my husband's sort of taking my arm saying, "I think it's time for us to go now, Nick," because he can see where this conversation's starting to head. And she sort of looked at me and I could tell that she was paralyzed. She really was thinking about the fact that she didn't like what this guy was doing to her dog, but she also didn't want to intervene because he was the professional.
Yeah.
And for me, I tell all my clients, I mean, even when we're out and about training, it's like, don't let anyone just approach your dog. Don't let someone touch your dog. Certainly never let anyone do anything to your dog that you're not comfortable with. You know, I mean, I actually have my clients practice going, "Stop, please don't come any closer," or "No, please don't touch my dog." We have them role play and practice that so that when they're out and about and it happens, it's a natural thing to do. Because even when you work with clients with reactive dogs and somebody's coming towards them, "Oh, let me stroke your dog." Why are we so hesitant to sort of go, "No, get away from my dog"? You know, somebody coming and touching my dog is like somebody walking in through my front door. That's personal property. You wouldn't do that. But we're hesitant to stop people doing that. So, and I think as a society, we've sort of got this white coat syndrome, haven't we? We sort of defer to professionals and we don't question. We do it with doctors and dentists. You know, so as soon as someone's got a doctor in front of their name, we sort of, okay, you know what you're talking about. But that isn't always the case. You know, professionals are not always right?
No, and you know, even with that, you have to advocate. You have to advocate for yourself because they don't have all the answers. Right. And if you feel that you've taken your dog to a particular trainer and you don't have a right feeling, then you've got to stand up and say, "Okay, I think we're done. Thank you very much," and just leave. But yeah, I mean, I totally understand. And I try and be empathetic with people like that have found themselves with. Well, I am empathetic because they don't know any different, and of course they put their trust in somebody.
Right.
They are trusting that that person who says they're a professional and that they are paying good money to is going to do the right thing. But people just don't know. So. It is hard to regulate this industry. I do believe that, and I've spoken to other people about it, that dog trainers dog training as a profession is still seen as a bit of that's nice. You're a dog trainer. Yeah. It's not really taken seriously.
Right.
Even though we go into people's homes, we change their lives, whatever. But it's still not taken seriously. And so regulating it doesn't ever seem that it's going to happen. And so that's one of the reasons why PPG, as well as VSA and VSPDT, are founding members of the Dog Training Behavior Charter, Dog Behavior and Training Charter in the UK.
Right.
What made you join that?
Well, I think for many years, and I mean, you know this, Vicky, that for many years, I mean, PPG there were very few people that we could partner with. I mean, we gravitated towards you guys over at Positively because, you know, you're fully aligned with us, we align with you. There were no other organizations in the US that we were comfortable fully embracing because of ethics and equipment use and that type of thing. And it's always been very important for me that when we find people that fully support, that sort of align with us, that we fully support them. Because this isn't about me or you, is it? I mean, this is about the movement. This is about pets. This is about pet owners and the pet community. So it was very important that I fully embrace that. And also, I think, the more organizations that we can pull together, PPG, you said it at the beginning, we're all about collaboration, building a huge platform. Because as a huge platform, it's hard to ignore, isn't it? It's very easy to ignore a small organization that's sort of out there in the corner. Everybody's going, oh, they're the extreme people over there. Don't worry about them. But when all those types of organizations band together, it makes it more formidable. It makes it more difficult to ignore. And it will make it easier for us to move the benchmark further into the direction that we feel. Look, I have no hesitation and no doubt that we're on the right side of history. I have no doubt about that at all. I'm also extremely open to recognizing that if we want to work in a scientific industry, we have to accept that, God forbid, at some point the science contradicts us. I don't ever see it happening, but 1% of me has to remain open to, if the science does, we need to be able to have an open mind and say, okay, let's listen and talk about it. But I feel very comfortable that on my deathbed, I will be able to say that I was on the right side of history when it comes to our industry. Everything else about our society, look at the way we are with children now. On that point, there are still people out there that are doing extremely cruel things to their children. But that's not the majority. The majority of people now recognize that good parenting is not about being physically stronger than a 5-year-old, and that there are other ways that you can manage a 5-year-old's behavior. And I'm absolutely convinced that as we move forwards, as the scientific body grows, and it's already quite extensive. I was talking to Zazie Todd a few days ago, and Zazie was helping me compile a whole bunch of research on shock collars. And when she sent the document to me, thank you, Zazie, love you to bits for doing this, 10 pages of citations of research that's been done about how shock is not the way we should be moving. And you think, you look at 10 pages of research papers and you think, how are we still where we are given the body of science that's out there now, that's advising us, informing us, educating us. The fact that people are still using that equipment, and not just the equipment, because let's be honest, hanging dogs, kicking dogs, prodding dogs.
Oh my God.
Even take the equipment out of it, there are still a lot of people doing some very disgusting things to animals. And
out in the open and
right.
on social media and celebrated.
Yeah.
But I remember when a certain television show came out at a similar time as my television show came out. Actually, just after my show came out. And I remember the organizations like the American Humane and other organizations speaking out against those methods in a very vocal way. And lawsuits be damned, they continued.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Hollywood and money and that sexy stuff sells.
Yeah.
But I having worked in the television industry for now nearly 20 years, I absolutely see that the majority of producers and networks and don't really care about the ethics of the treatment of dogs, but if it makes them money and it gets them advertising, great. Right. So it's sometimes a real battle to say, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't believe in that. That is not the way that I'm going to do it. And so that's in my industry how I've come up against brick walls, and it's definitely been tough. But I was always, these people that were speaking out against this massive machine and having that courage to speak out. And I see it again now, that organizations and certain people and individuals are coming out and saying no to these people that are hanging dogs and kicking dogs and celebrating on social media. They're saying no and they're fighting back.
And I applaud anyone that does, but I also challenge those that are not to get off the fence, because there are also, and I'm not going to name people, these people know who they are. There are so many people out there that for the want of selling a few extra courses or not wanting to rock the boat, they're not prepared. They'll have private conversations about it, but they won't say anything publicly. And again, you can talk publicly without naming and shaming people.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Right? You don't have to go out there and put a whole list of people's names down that you don't agree with, but you can certainly go out there and say anyone that is doing this to a dog should be condemned. Absolutely, it's inhumane. It's cruel. By all definitions of cruel, it's cruel. So yeah, I mean, and back in the day, and I remember the era that you were talking about, there were a couple of prominent trainers at the time that, and it's one of the reasons why I was not very comfortable with our industry, because there were a couple of really prominent trainers that at the time actually somewhat endorsed him. And they should have been the people standing up and saying no.
Yep.
Because they were the biggest names in the industry. They had the following, they had the knowledge, the science, the title, and they didn't. So I think we have to be really careful that we have to advocate. I mean, the bottom line is we have to advocate. We have to advocate.
You know what? It's not, and it's not easy, and it's very uncomfortable. And I know that you and I have definitely been on the receiving end of some very disgraceful and disgusting vitriol. I mean, because we stay true to our values. But I mean, what can you do? Like, hunker down and feel sorry for yourself, and absolutely not. Each little barb, each threat, each, somebody saying that I'm a snowflake and worse, calling me every single word under the sun and go do this and do that. I mean, is fuel to my fire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and I remember you and I had a conversation one night where and I sort of called you because, there's very few people that I feel I can really vent to, because I'm not going to vent negatively to the people in PPG, because I need to be their cheerleader. I need to keep them going. But this, some days you feel so alone when you've had another death threat because you've put out a survey about shock collars, and you get an email and then somebody calls your private phone and leaves a death threat. And you sort of question, but then the next morning you wake up and you think, you know what? You don't know me well enough to know. I mean, if you knew me well enough, you wouldn't do that, because that's I remember when PPG first started, a very big name in our industry somebody asked them about it on Facebook, and they said, quote, "It won't last." And I read it and went, you don't know me. You don't know anything about me. You don't know my background. You certainly don't know what motivates me. And I can tell you right now, if you'd have asked my parents, what's the worst thing you can say to Niki if you want her to fail? They would have said, do not challenge her for failure, because she will die putting her flag on the hill. So, comments like that do invigorate you. But there's also a very dark side to it as well, because we're still humans, right? And we still have emotions and feelings, and it can be very hurtful sometimes when, especially, and I'm not sure about you, but with me, I'm constantly checking myself, we'll do something and I'm constantly saying, okay, are we on the right side of science here? Are we falling ethically in the right area? Could this be misconstrued? Does it make us look extreme? I'm constantly challenging myself with that, because I don't want the tail to wag the dog. And I don't want the organization to become about personalities. I want it to stay about our membership and our movement and our mission and vision. Which is one of the reasons why I've tried not to put myself out there, because it's not about me. It's not about our board members or our steering committee. It's about our membership. Because ultimately, without our members, we can't move our mission forwards. No. So from day one, we've always tried to make PPG. We've always tried to provide value for our members, because if they get value from the organization, they will propagate our mission for us.
100%.
And they can do far more than I can do on my own or a few other people behind the scenes.
I am so glad that you are on the right side of history. I am so glad that you are a champion in this industry. And I am so glad that PPG is growing and growing and growing, and will continue to grow, so that it spreads like a spider web, doesn't it? So that, and organizations like the Dog Behavior and Training Charter, that where you can go with these great organizations, these founding members, and other organizations that have joined since we started. You can go there and find somebody that does have the right kind of ethics. And, we do always keep oversight on our people and on our members. And so, and it's very important for us. And so there is that. I mean, again, you can go to the PPG website, you can go to the VSA website and Positively website, and you can find trainers. But you can also go to the dog. I always want to say dog training, but dog behavior and training charter, because there you'll also find a whole load of organizations for trainers all over the world. And even though that's UK based, these organizations also have, a lot of them have members in different parts of the world. So I'm excited about where we want to go. And or where we're going. I'm like you, Nikki, we might not be here to see that sort of that final, like when the penny truly drops and punitive, it becomes a thing of the past. But I think we are getting there.
Mm-hmm. I think so. I mean, I do, because sometimes I just look at some of the pushback that we get from some of the other associations, and then they sort of make strategic decisions to sort of change some of their verbiage in terms of what members can do or not do. And that's being done because pressure from people, right? I've always believed that I've never believed, and it's why we wrote the book, that we are going to successfully license our industry.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I've never felt that, A, because it's not a federal issuance, which means state by state, and B, if you just look at the discrepancies between security guards, in one state, 2 years of training, in another state, 2 weeks of training. In some states, you have to have you have to be licensed to braid hair on a beach. In other states, you need a year's experience. And I think we have to be careful what we wish for, because we'll end up grandfathering everybody. I've always believed that if we can push the needle on the fraudulent marketing and consumer transparency and protection and public safety, and we can form a movement that way, and we can educate, if we have educated pet owners that truly know what they're looking for, that's going to have a bigger impact than anything else. Because when the market itself has a seismic shift and starts demanding, I want a dog trainer that will do A, B, and C and not do D, E, F, and G, that's when there's going to be significant changes in our industry. So I think we can all play a part in that. We all have a role to play in that by making sure that our websites look good, that we are honest about what we do, we're fully transparent, we communicate with our clients honestly, and that we call out and advocate people that do not by name, but by philosophy, by approach, by marketing message, so that pet owners truly know how to find the right professionals and what to look for. Then a lot of the other trainers will just fall by the wayside, because there's going to be nobody buying their products.
Yeah, here. Yeah. Niki, you are a light. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. And for anybody who wants to find out if they want to join PPG or find out more about PPG, where would they go?
petprofessionalguild.com. And if you we're actually going to be closing, we've got 7 websites because of all our different programs. And in the next 2 weeks, we're actually going to be closing them down for membership applications, because the second week in January, we're launching our brand new website. So if you go to petprofessionalguild.com, if you can't join, there'll be a short form you can fill out. And once we get your information, we'll let you know as soon as membership reopens.
Thank you, Niki, so much. It's been a real pleasure chatting with you.
No, it's always a pleasure, Vic. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. I knew that you'd enjoy this podcast. She is just a mind of information, and I feel very, very blessed to know her. And I've spoken at a couple conferences, both in person and online. And so I would definitely encourage everybody to attend the PPG conference. You will find there's so many amazing speakers, and you will really learn. There's so much great information. So, guys, have a great week, and I'll see you next week. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to Victoria Stilwell's Positively podcast. For Victoria's online dog training courses, more information, and helpful dog training tips, visit Victoria's official website at positively.com. Get connected on Facebook, Instagram, and other social media as Victoria Stilwell, and follow her on Twitter at Victoria S. Learn to become a professional dog trainer with the Victoria Stilwell Academy at vsdogtrainingacademy.com. And be sure to tune in next time as Victoria helps you and your dog live your best life together, positively.